Last week we had a big windstorm and Mother Nature thinned out the weak and broken limbs in our trees. Our power was still out from the storm and you can hear the generator in the background powering the house. The pile of debris in the background is part of what I picked up from our yard. I have this machine to reduce that debris into a smaller pile. Shredding and chipping makes the debris break down faster and we use it as mulch. After checking the oil, I like to start the engine and let it warm up some. I engage the drum head slowly at a lower RPM to limit the wear on the drive belt. Here you can hear the engine take up the load of turning the drum. I'll let the machine turn slow for a bit before raising the engine RPM to go to work. At this time I make sure I have my safety glasses on and ear protection in and that the working area is clear of tripping hazards. Once the machine is up to speed, it's time to go to work. I use a pitchfork for loading the little sticks, cones, and fir needles into the shredder. I set the material on the top feed table and break the material apart, or I fold it in a line to better feed into the drum below. My idea is to evenly feed the material so the engine speed stays the same and the feed chute doesn't get clogged up. While doing that, I look for things like dirt, rocks, or metal debris that can damage my knives. Note the split rubber hanging down. It's there to keep things from being thrown back out of the shredder. I never let my hands go past that bit of belting. The pitchfork also works great for clearing the output chute of the machine. Looking at the discharge chute, you can see how fast the material can be thrown out. If the material is wet at all, it'll stick in this area and clog up. It also very quickly makes a pile in front of the chute that needs to be constantly cleaned out. Feeding limbs into the chipper chute is a little different than loading into the shredder. When the chipper knives are sharp, it'll actually pull the limb in. These branches are green Douglas Fir, so they're soft and they feed easily. I have to hold back on the limb to slow the amount that it feeds. The chipper chute is narrow at the bottom and not real wide at the top either. I usually have to break off the smaller limbs on the branches for easier feeding. The tops of the branches will have lots of needles and small limbs and tend to clog up in the chute. I keep a stick close by that I use to push the fine material into the chipper knives with. I try to alternate the feeding of fine material with chipping branches to make a mixed pile of mulch. Not all the debris was from the storm. Here I'm feeding part of a rhododendron limb that we pruned a couple of months ago. The wood is seasoned and very hard, and the shape makes it hard to feed into the knives. I usually end up with limbs that make it so it won't feed at all. So I cut them off with a lopper and then feed them separately. Here's another piece of that same bush, and you can see how its shape makes it hard to force into the knives. Some of the branches that fell actually stuck into the ground like a spear. They picked up a bunch of dirt, and that'll dull the chipper knives. So I cut the dirty pieces off, and I'll put those dirty pieces in with the regular trash. Feeding big branches into the chipper can overload the engine pretty quickly. This time it killed the motor nearly instantly. What I didn't know at the time is I was nearly out of fuel. We ran out of fuel at that point. I filled the tank back up, restarted the machine, and this time concentrated on not letting that branch feed so fast. I have to work it at different angles to get it to feed into the knives. You can hear that engine slow down and catch on and slow down and catch on. I also have to pay attention to any limbs that may be behind me on the branch. These chips will mix nicely into the pile. After finally getting that branch fed through, I grab my lawn rake and clean up the small stuff that broke off. When I'm getting close to being through with my debris pile, I'll grab the debris by hand, making sure I don't pick up any rocks or dirt clods. I always use the chipper for cleaning out the inside of the machine. I save a larger branch for the last thing I feed into it. The chippings going through the inside of the machine blast any of the sticky stuff loose and leave the drum and grating clean. Makes it a lot easier to service the chipper blades and mulcher knives when they need to be sharpened. When I'm done, I shut off the gas and let the engine run until it dies. While I'm waiting for it to die, I'll clean up the ground that was under the debris pile. I try to listen for the engine to start misfiring, and then I'll slow it down and disengage the drum. This time it died before I was ready. When I disengage it, that drum will spin for a few minutes before it finally stops. Compare the grinding pile size now and the area of where the debris was stored before. In the next video, I'll bring the machine into my shop and show you how I service the chipper and shredder knives. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay safe.